Hello. Today we'll take a look at Warplan, which is a game from Slytherin. I'm in a play-by-email game, or a couple of them. This one is on turn 59, which is November of 1941. It's been a pretty interesting game. I'd say very interesting. The Axis managed to launch Sealion right after the conquest of France in late fall of 41. They landed in this port, Dover, and were able to advance across Britain, take London, and get all the way up to the southern part of Scotland before they could be stopped by the U.S. entry into the war and the British along this Tweed River line and this range of hills. So since then, it's been basically a stalemate for a year in this area. The Axis have gained a couple of hexes, but generally it's been pretty even. One of the interesting things that's happened is that supply has been a problem for the U.S., and I'm not really sure why. I think it's been a problem anyway. They have had a hard time replenishing their troops in the area. In Warplan, you can see as part of your economy here, if you click on the flag for the U.S., you can see their economy total is 363 points of production. And of that, 300 is devoted to upgrading units and reinforcing losses in units. And I've had this consistently, I would say, at 200 plus for the US. So when they first arrived in Scotland, I expected their units to very quickly replenish losses, but that wasn't the case. The units would get damaged and then stay at low strength for a while before they reorganized and replaced their losses. And that was a surprise. I'm not honestly sure why that's happened with the US. When you start a game of Warplan, or sorry, a turn of Warplan, you get a series of icons on the right side that explain things that have been happening, and I'll go through those in a second. But first of all, I would say let's take a quick look at the situation here. We basically have 5 British corps and a British headquarters, and we have 3 US corps, one of which is armor, along with a US headquarters defending against about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, roughly 11 probably, plus a headquarters, German corps. So forces are approximately equal. The Germans have, it looks like, 1 fighter. The US and Britain have more fighters. So probably the US and Britain should be gaining fighter superiority, but possibly the Germans are more advanced. Here we have US escort fighters, 1941, and they're at 12 out of 20 strength, based out of Belfast, Ireland. Here we have a British fighter that is 20 out of 20 strength, and he's also Interceptor 41, so he's full strength. We also have another British fighter here that's full strength with Escort Fighter 1942 upgrade. So probably we should be gaining air superiority, although I think there was another German fighter that's the part of the area, and that's why previously the Germans were able to continue bombing pretty easily. In addition to that, the U.S. and Britain have 3 medium bomber wings in this area. So pretty substantial force. They're pretty well dug in. If you click on a unit, you can see how well dug in it is. There will be shovels that show up here to show how well dug in the unit is. Right now, this unit's not dug in because I just moved these 2 corps into the line. But you can see a corps that's been there a while. This Armor Corps, USA 1st Armor, is dug in with 2 shovels, which is the max. So he should be pretty hard to budge. And he's defending just south of Edinburgh. So probably this will be a tough place for the Germans to make a lot of headway. At least that's my hope. Generally speaking, the US units are, I think, a little bit lower strength or effectiveness because they start with lower experience. So right here you see this unit is 49. The British units are usually above 50. Here these are in the 50s range, so that hurts the strength of the US units a little bit. This unit is just really disorganized. It's at 69% effectiveness, meaning it's seen heavy combat, and I have it behind the lines to try to reorganize. You can see a little green plus on the unit. That shows that I've prioritized reinforcements and replacements into this unit. So overall, this front's basically a stalemate, and my goal here is just to tie down German forces and hopefully deplete some of their resources to reinforce the area. Okay, the other thing that's going on up here is I'm keeping up a raiding effort against the Nordic convoy lines along the coast of Scandinavia. I've also got a raiding effort over here based out of Leningrad with Soviet subs and surface ships raiding the convoy lines out of Sweden. So I'm trying to limit the German income from those northern resource lines. If I zoom out here, you can see that at a high level, the British control Egypt as well as Syria, Iraq, and Persia. And the Italians still control Libya. There hasn't been an attack from Libya into Egypt, and there hasn't been an attack from Egypt into Libya yet. It's been just a stalemate. So as the British, since I've been under so much pressure, I've withdrawn some forces and basically left 2 corps to defend the El Alamein line, as well as a few divisions to defend the ports, including these are Canadians and these are Commonwealth units. And the Italians are just holed up at Tobruk. The Italians have left an open port here at Misurata, so there's a chance that I could launch an invasion there and move on Tripoli and just bypass Tobruk entirely. Greece was never invaded by the Axis, neither was Yugoslavia. And I think in this game that neither will join the Axis side, even though historically I think there was a chance that the Yugoslavs, after the coup in 1940, could have joined the Allied side or been a problem for the Germans. In this game, I think the Germans can safely ignore them, and that's what the Axis has done. There's some British subs based out of Malta that are raiding this convoy line to Naples. The Spanish aligned with Germany after the Sealion effort succeeded. So the U.S. has launched, along with a few Canadians and British forces, have launched an invasion in Portugal and northern Spain. Currently, we control a port of size 3, which is Vigo, and a port of size 4, which is Porto. And that is simply not enough to supply the forces that are present in the area. So the units here are chronically short on supply and just basically struggling to hold out against the combined might of the Spanish army, which is here, the Italian army, and the German army. So this is really a difficult bridgehead to hold with limited supply. Because of that, I launched another small invasion down here in southern Portugal, and that's been responded to by the Spanish army. Very limited forces here because this is only a size 2 port, so really not much can be supplied here. I thought that potentially I could close in on Lisbon, but the force in Lisbon is heavily entrenched, and I really don't think it would be easy to take, and there aren't really forces to spare or supply to do it with limited supply in this northern bridgehead. So this is really a difficult time for the Allies here. I didn't know how it would turn out when I made the invasion, but the way it's turned out is that it's just been a really tough go for the Allies. You can see that this American corps just got thrown back from this forward position where this red circle is. That means that the Axis attacked it. And also the headquarters unit was defending the line here and got thrown back. So there's basically a breach forming right here with not a lot to hold the breach. Basically, we have 1 armor unit free. And potentially we could pull this armor unit back that was trying to isolate this port of Ferrol. If we were able to take this port, then I think supply would be a lot better in the area. But it's the unit here is a 7-point entrenched unit, and it's really, there's just not the strength on the Allied side to take it. The Allies tried to invade near Bilbao. They landed on this beach, but the game did not allow the Allies to move into an undefended Bilbao. Instead, they had to take this hex. And I thought that there wouldn't be enough movement points for the Allied unit or the Axis unit that was in Santander to get to Bilbao. But they were able to get into Bilbao and defend it, which means this Allied corps is just going to die. It's currently cutting rail supply, but the Axis can get sea supply through Cartagena, Barcelona, and other ports, Gibraltar, which they've taken. So really, I think supply is not a problem for the Axis forces, even though the supply line's been cut here. Recently, the Allies also were able to get a bridgehead here in near Brest. They control 2 ports, a 3-point port and a 2-point port. So that's a reasonable amount of supply. And supply here, I think, will probably be decent. But you can see that the Axis have moved planes into the area, 1, 2, 3, 4 air wings. So I think their goal is going to be to try to interdict supplies coming into these ports to starve out the Allied attackers, and also potentially interdict ships that try to sail into the area with more troops. So it might be difficult to shuttle troops into this area. I think, given the immediate deployment of more Axis forces in the area, it might make sense to try to take Brest, because if Brest falls, it's a strength 5 port, and the Allies could hold up here, form a defensive line, and tie down more Axis troops. Ideally, there will be more invasions in early 42 or spring of 42 by the Allies, but forces have to be mustered for that. And also landing ships have to be built, because as you can see, if you click on a country, there are 40 landing ships for the UK, which means they can land 1 corps plus 1 division, and only 20 landing ships for the US, which means they can land only 2 divisions. So amphibious capability is very limited right now for the Allies, and they need to spend points to build more if they want to try to land anywhere. Italy has decent defenses, but there really aren't any British forces available to invade anyway. I would like to be able to send forces into Italy through Egypt, but right now the Allies are really stretched. Their economy is somewhat limited. Britain has 176 economy, but for much of the game, their economy was between 5 and 50 points when the invasion of Britain was going on. It interrupted their convoy lines. The convoy lines couldn't go to any factory at all, so they produced nothing. And only recently, after Persia and Iraq was taken, has British economy stabilized above 100. So their production has been really limited. The U.S. has good production at 363, and they're building as fast as they can. But as the U.S., I tried to produce some armor and air units because the Axis air was overwhelming, and I wanted to contest that. So the U.S. has spent a lot of their production thus far in the short time they've been in the war, or leading up to war. They actually just got into the war recently. They were producing those types of units, and now can probably start to build out their army a little bit better. Canada economy is extremely small at 22, and there aren't that many Canadians in the game. There are just a few infantry units scattered around and a headquarters or two. The Russians are at 307, so you can see they're lower than the U.S. production. But since Germany's been so focused on other fronts, the Barbarossa attempt was fairly weak, and the Russians have been able to hold in the Baltic states here, as well as at Vitebsk. Smolensk has never fallen, which is here. They also have held Gomel in the center, and Dnepropetrovsk also is holding, and the Germans haven't been able to cross into Crimea either. So the Russian line is fairly sturdy, although the Russian units are not upgraded. So for example, if I click on this unit, it's an army, and you can see it's still at 1939 level of upgrade. I have a few that are upgraded farther, like these 7-point units. They're at 1942, so there are some more advanced Russian units, but a lot of them are still 1939 level upgrades, so there's a long way to upgrade the Russian units to get them really fit to fight against the Germans. Even these 7-pointers, as you can see, a German unit at this point in the game, an infantry corps, is around 10 strength, maybe even 11. But the Russians, top of the line, fully upgraded units are only a 7. And that's because of the experience. These are only, for example, the 31 experience. Probably these German units are around a 70 experience. But hopefully they're a little bit ground down. You can see this German unit is only at, well, he's a half strength corps, so that's why he's a 5. This is a full strength corps, which is at strength 6, so you can see he's worn down. The Germans have started to split their corps because they just don't have enough units to cover ground, but as they've been building in 41, they've been able to kind of fill out their line better. I had started some infiltration attempts with cavalry in the south, but a bunch of German units rushed into the line to close the gaps, and that's been stopped. I wasn't able to get any encirclement going. It looks like the Germans are kind of pulling back into a defensive line here. They were advancing, but I think they've stopped that for the winter. So I think they're sort of turtling up for the winter. There was some sharp action up here with the Finns. The Finns tried to encircle Leningrad, but Soviet cavalry was able to move into this area, encircle them, and force them to fall back. So that's where the game stands right now. We can take a look at casualties. If we look at casualties, we see that the Germans have taken 787 land casualties, and the Allies combined, well, let's leave France out of it. So UK, US, and Soviet Union combined, which are the countries still in the war, those have taken about 850 points, so more than the Germans, but fewer air losses than the Germans. The Germans are at 257 air losses. So casualties are, I would say, fairly even between the active allies and the Germans. Soviet casualties are very low. It's probably, in my experience, at least in games I've seen, not uncommon to have Soviet casualties around 1,000 for land forces at this point in time. So they're at about 40% of their normal loss. Pretty low, and they've held a lot of ground. So I think the Soviet Union can turn out to be fairly strong in 42 and 43. At least that's the hope. So that's where we stand in the game right now. I can run through my icons here to take a look at what's going on. The UK is at low manpower, so if we look at their production, we can see they're at 47% manpower. They've just taken a beating. And so I wouldn't want to build any new units with the UK. I don't think I have any coming on. Just merchant marine and escorts is all that's in the pipeline for them. And I'm basically devoting all of their efforts to reinforcing and upgrading their existing units. So I'm not trying to build anything new for the UK. The next one tells me that I've got a unit without supply, a unit with basic supply, so there are supply problems in this new invasion area, a unit with no supply, this is the unit that landed near Bilbao, and more basic supply. Pretty much every unit in this bridgehead is at basic supply, which is a big problem. We've got a few air units here, but it's tough to use them when they aren't able to replenish their supply. Maybe it's a good idea to fall back from that area and abandon the bridgehead, but so many Axis forces are tied down there that I'm not sure I want to do that right now, unless I have somewhere better to send them. Maybe I'll do that when I approach spring of 42, if I'm able to get another beachhead, or if they push me out before that, I'll have to fall back. Soviets do get some partisans. This guy probably won't be able to do much because he doesn't have any supply where he is. So he could either go into the Pripyat marshes and try to just hang out there, which would accomplish nothing, or maybe he could make his way toward the front and do something useful. Partisan activity, not amounting to much at this point. Vichy France is still independent. The Germans haven't toppled the government yet, which they could do by invading it pretty easily. Okay, so we have some reinforcements to look at. I think probably those are all going to be Soviet. Yep, just one Soviet Guards army that was built by me, and then soon we're going to have the Siberians showing up. I think I already got one Siberian unit, and the Soviets also were able to build an escort fighter air army. So that I'm looking forward to getting that unit, and I'll try to build another one because they really need to contest the air with the Germans. At this point, they've just been overrun by the Luftwaffe, taken heavy losses. The Red Air Force has taken heavy losses, and it's very expensive to rebuild it. So if I look at a typical fighter unit, it's at 18 out of 20. And this is probably one of the stronger fighter units. Let me find another one here. This one's 18 out of 20 as well. Let's see how we're doing. 17 out of 20 for this one. I think I'll turn it on to full support, which will cause it to intercept if the Germans try a bombing mission. This one I'll leave at mission only, which means it will not intercept any attempts by the Germans to bomb the Soviet lines. And also this battleship is damaged, so I have it being repaired in Leningrad port. I'm tempted to send it out to raid, but I think right now I'm going to leave it. Okay, for the Soviets, I think I'll place their Guards army near Leningrad. And it comes in at pretty good experience. 40% is great for the Soviets, and 100% organization. So it's a strong unit. I can rail it when it arrives. I think that I might rail it to the southern sector of the line where it seems like I can maybe launch an offensive. So let me bring this army to the center of the line. Out of Dnepropetrovsk, and then I will rail this Guards army from Leningrad down to D-Town and let it entrench there just in case the Germans launch an offensive in 42. I'm not sure if they will, but they probably will try. Or I maybe use it to reinforce, if I'm able to get an attack going down here, I may use it for that. There aren't really many attacking options along the front. If you see, for example, all three of these cavalry corps could get a 1-to-1 against this Romanian corps. I could get a 3-to-2 against this Romanian corps. If I stretched out this armor corps, possibly I could get more. That might be an option. Though if I move forward, it's only November. If the Germans get clear weather, they could really unleash on the corps that moved out of entrenchment, because right now the Soviets are in entrenched positions. And the Germans just fell back. So the question is, do I want to try to advance and take a chance that the Germans get a clear weather impulse? I think because the rest of the Allies are in such trouble, I will do that. I will move forward and take a chance that the Panzers will launch an attack. And then you always want to make sure your headquarters in this game are within 5 of the frontline units. So if you click on a headquarters, you can see the orange flags that shows which units they give their bonus to. Here's a unit down here that is not in range for a bonus. So potentially I want to move this guy forward, which I'll do. And then I can get one attack here, I think, at 2-to-1. And I think I'll take that because it's against a mountain unit, and those are fairly expensive. So I'll launch it. I just took 2 losses on this armor, 1 loss on this infantry unit. This Guards army is down to 35 out of 36 strength. It looks like the Germans were attacking this army. So I'll try another attack. That one was okay. And there's a very good chance now that this unit will be forced back because his effectiveness will be going down with all these attacks. I'm up to 3-to-1 though, so I'll launch another one. He's been forced back. So then I think I'll exploit this with a cavalry unit. It'll probably just get pushed back, but at least maybe it'll take the heat from this Guards army to give it some time to dig in this position. Right now it's not entrenched at all. So other attacks we could potentially make are here at 2-to-1, although we will be taking armor losses. So I'm tempted to pass on this. I think I will until I see whether the Germans launch attacks here, which they might. I think I'll also try to infiltrate the lines because I do have more units than the Allies. Let's see if we can get a decent attack here. Nope, under 1. Not very good. But if they don't fill this hole, then I'll advance again next turn and try and attack perhaps. I could send a cavalry unit through the swamps. I may do that at some point. So I'll move forward a little bit. And in the north, there really aren't any good attacks to make. For example, these 2 cavalry corps, 1-to-2. These 2 armies plus this cavalry corps, 1-to-1. 1-to-2. And we're in snow. The Soviets perform a little bit better in snow, but still their attacks would be very low odds. Probably not worth doing because we'll just be throwing away points, but maybe we could try a 1-to-1 on this German corps. Let's just see. Yeah, you see, I just lost 6 steps and he lost 1. That's not very good. I'd like to put pressure on the Germans, but not at that price. Probably better to get the Soviets built up so that we can put pressure in 42 when the weather clears. That might be a better option, but let's see how the winter progresses. So I think that's all I need to do for the Soviets. For the Western Allies, I don't think any moves here are really necessary. I want to make sure that this plane is not flying missions because it's so weak, and it's not. Same thing down, well, let's take a look here. We might need to do a few things with the Navy. I think the German Navy has sallied, so let's see what we can do to them. I've got a carrier group here. Can't surface attack enemy subs when they're not near land, so that must be a sub force. Interesting. I thought I could still hit them, but maybe not. It looks like the Allies, or sorry, the Axis are going to try to knock my carrier groups. So I think I'll just get the carrier groups out of there before the land-based air has a chance to pace them. I think I might have a chance to take Brest. So let me put this unit here. He's 1 to 2. Don't really have any other units to throw into the attack, because if I pull back fully, then I'll give up these ports, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather defend a line right here. So let me hold this line for now. And then the question is, I think I'll go here with this armor corps. If he takes this port of Brest, then I should be able to take Brest once he moves out. So we'll try that. I don't really see a reason to send more naval units down here right now. There's not much that they can accomplish. So I may launch a carrier strike here, but the problem is these guys are down to 1 turn of supply, and they're so far from any Allied controlled ports other than the ports that are low supply in Portugal that I think I have to send them home. And so I may launch another carrier task force here with British units. So I formed a small carrier task force. I'll sail it south. Then I have to figure out what to do with this bridgehead. So in the bridgehead, big troubles, not enough units. I need more units to head this way. But there aren't any units coming right now. Let's see what the US has coming. Next turn, 2 turns, they should get another infantry corps. But they really need one right now. So what I could do is I could try to get this US unit into a port. I'll do that so that it can sail next turn for Portugal. And let's see what I can do to manage this crisis. I think that there just are not enough units to hold the whole line. I definitely need to pull back with this armor unit, but the problem is that opens up my flank. So let's see if we can have the Canadian headquarters hold the flank, sad to say, and march this armor unit south. So they roll south, but they can't reach. And then I think I want to hold this clear hex as a priority. And I want to switch these 2 units because I want to give this infantry corps a chance to recover. And this headquarters unit just got forced back, so I'll leave it here and hope that, in particular, this infantry corps can recover some strength so that I can put it back into the line. At 1 strength, it's at 12% effectiveness, so it's really disorganized. It really needs to just be organized. I've got all of my allied fighters on flying defensively, and I can potentially launch some airstrikes, but I don't like to launch those unless I'm about to launch an attack. Let's see what my attack would be here. 3 to 1, that's pretty good. I'll go ahead and launch an airstrike here and let's see what happens. Yep, we caused a point of loss. Caused no points. I'll launch another airstrike. This guy has no missions left, and I'm not clear why he doesn't have any missions left. Oh, nope. I guess I could use this unit, but he really needs to recover. He's only at 61% effectiveness. I don't want to use him. So I think I'll use these 2 armor to launch a 3 to 1 attack. Let's see how that turns out. Unfortunately, we took 2 losses on the armored units, which is not good, but we inflicted 3 on the Spanish. Not terrible, but not a very good outcome. That was expensive for me. So I think that's it for this theater, or this bridgehead. Here, it looks like I'm about to get flanked by the Spanish. So, let's see. I think that's a very strong unit. Impressive. 9-point Spanish unit. So I'll just hold there. The Portuguese could jump out and try to cut this unit off. If they do, it might be tough to get them back in supply, but also if they do that, they would have to reinforce Lisbon and the unit would not be dug in there. So I think that could, in the end, turn out okay for me. I've thought about just rushing south with all the units and trying to seize Lisbon because it's a 9-point port. It would be a big supply boost for me, but I don't think they could take it. I think they would just rush south, lose their bridgeheads in the north, and die. There's nothing to... Oh, actually, there is one unit to be shipped from the U.S., so let me embark it and sail it east. And then I've also got an air unit, a fighter here, and I will sail that in the direction of these bridgeheads and decide next turn where to send it. I don't think I have any other moves that are needed right now. Just checking around. I think that'll be it for this turn. So for builds, there's only 7 stockpile. The British can't build anything. 19 stockpile for the US. The Soviets have 313 stockpile, and I think I'm going to produce another air superiority unit. So that's built, and the rest of their points, 79, isn't enough to do anything. Let me just check research. I've got all of my, these are the research centers. I've got all my scientists already allocated, so nothing to do there. And we can end the turn and send it back to my opponent.